I was walking through this winter wonderland, thinking about how much I love winter, and snow, and ice. And you know who else loves snow and ice? This queen! Oh wait, let me try that again. Elsa! So I decided to make her costume, but first, some inspiration. I have access to a beautiful frozen lake, at least until it melts for the season. I still got it. Mostly. I started off with the top, and I actually used a pattern this time, which is rare, but I got Nikita's fabulous book as a gift for Christmas. So I cut out her pattern from blue cotton. The color is not quite the shade of blue I was going for, but it won't show through at the end. After cutting out the cotton, I clipped the marks so I can align the pieces later on. And then I cut the pattern pieces out of not cheap buckram. Dramatic sigh. Something went horribly wrong. For the lining, I picked a whole bunch of different princess fabrics that I had left over because why not? It looks chaotically princessy. I cut out the pattern 3 times, one from the top layer, one for the lining, and one for the buckram. It's a very stiff, fusible web that I can use to make the bodice very stiff. And then I trimmed this by the seam allowance because you don't actually want it bulking up the seam allowance. So I'm gonna go iron now, and that's really boring, so you're not gonna come along. So the buckram refused to bond to any of the fabric that I needed it to. So that was a very expensive fail, but I'm gonna try and use some of this as denim. I'm gonna try to use this to make it stiff enough. It turns out I did not need to worry about making it stiff enough on the inside, but I did end up lining it with denim. I lined the denim and the outside fabric together and basted them to keep them together while sewing. I also lined up the chaotic princess lining with the clip marks and pinned them and sewed them together. I had some tea before doing the same thing to the outside fabric. This is not entirely what the instructions said to do. You're supposed to make boning channels out of bias tape. I skipped that step. I personally prefer to stitch down the seam allowance to make boning channels. This particular time I stitched the boning channels on the outside fabric. Sometimes I'll do it on the lining so it doesn't show on the outside. I have fully boned the bodice. Really think this looks so pretty right now. But it's, gonna get covered up and no one's ever gonna see it again. I was actually doing something, Go back to napping. So the next step is I'm going to attach the lining right here. Right there. Emmie. There's a bit of discoloration on here from the failed fusible buckram experiment, but I'm going to cover it up anyway, so I'm not too concerned about it. So for the lining, I'm going to start off by stitching here, just to make the back neat. And then I'm going to flip it over, wrong sides together. And I'm going to do a stitch along the top here and cover it with bias tape. Originally, I was thinking about just stitching and flipping and not doing the bias tape, but then I remembered that I had decided to do a chaotic and not at all matching lining, so if there was any chance that it was gonna poke through, it would show the fact that it was pink and not blue. It would kind of ruin the fact that I was sneakily hiding a really fun lining if you could see it from the outside, so oops. So I went with bias tape. I did machine top stitch the bias tape because it wouldn't show. Before you watch this next part, you should know that I will be buying a grommet press very soon. I like my fingers. I installed the grommets with what's left of my fingers. Ow. That kind of hurt. Anyway. I guess we have to go outside now. And go dig in the snow pile again? The next step is to put all of these on the bodice. So, I'm gonna put this off for a while, do something else. That something else was cover my boyfriend's truck in little duck snowballs. So next up is the skirt, and if you watched my last video about making the fairy godmother, you'll know that I had a mermaid style skirt that I didn't use the lining for. I have to fit it slightly because it's a little bit too big here, but I'm going to basically use it as a pattern. I'm going to have to add a little bit of length to the train because it's not the right shape or length, but that's not really a problem. So I don't have to mock up the pattern. This is the fabric that I have. It has little silver ice threads running through it. I did order that, it's not thrifted. I also ordered this, so it's not up next, but tell me in the comments what your best guess is as to what I'm going to make with this. I also have lining for Elsa here, so let's see how that goes. First I had to clean my sewing area. It's funny how every time I clean and organize, I just get frustrated because I can't find anything anymore. Anyway, the skirt. I had some leftover from my other Elsa project. Why I did Elsa Frozen 2 before Frozen 1, I'll never know, but I did. So I'm about to cut it, and I did add a little bit more flare and room for a hem at the bottom. I have worked with this fabric before for this one. It is in fact the same fabric. And I happen to know that it doesn't like pins. Sometimes when you put a pin in it, it rips these silver threads out. So I'm going to use pattern weights and very careful scissors because I am no longer allowed to use a rotary cutter after I nearly cut off my finger. All of the skirt pieces are cut and I added some length. That's the back piece, so I wanted it to be longer and pointier and a little bit wider. And before I do anything, including ironing it, I'm going to overlock all the edges because this stuff frays like crazy. Oh, and I will cut the lining after doing that. I'm going to cut the lining now, using the pieces as a guide, and I will definitely find some pattern weights before doing this. I ended up having to use my cell phone as a pattern weight, so obviously I couldn't record it, but the lining is now cut. I'm going to press everything before pinning and stitching. And by pinning, of course, I meant clips. So I clipped all of the seams here. And right here is where I remembered that she has a slit in her dress, and I can't sew all the way up, and that would have been a big mess. At some point, you are required to put on your in-progress costume and be very silly. This would be that point for me. I have ironed the seams on the lining and the skirt. I'm gonna let them hang for a couple of days and to let them stretch out. And then I will stitch them together so that they have approximately the same length after some trimming, of course. The panels are all cut on a bias at the bottom to make it a mermaid shape. By letting it hang for 2 days, it will pre-stretch the fabric so that it shouldn't really stretch anymore when it's done. It's now 2 days later, and it's been stretching with gravity for, well, 2 days. My next steps are to stitch the slit, and then hem the lining and the fashion fabric together, and then my horsehair braid has arrived. You put horsehair braid in the hem to make it a little bit stiffer. Also, I made the waistband while it was hanging for 2 days, so it's just the regular fabric with the lining fabric inside for strength. This stuff is a little bit weak. Or, instead of sewing, I could just pet my dog, who's feeling very needy. Right, Emmie? Emmie always acts like she's neglected, but I promise she's very spoiled. Please notice my lovely ring here. I was trying so hard to remember to wear it on camera, but I just keep forgetting. It's Elsa's crown. I stitched the slit, and I understitched it so the lining would stay under. And I pinned the bottom hem and stitched that too. Yes, I did actually use pins for this part. I may have overestimated how much of a mermaid this is because this is really big. I mean, I like it, so I'm gonna keep it, but it's very voluminous at the bottom. Yes. I was doing some walking tests in the skirt. ignore my awesome pajamas. And the front and the next side piece are just way too mermaidy, so I'm gonna go back and edit them before it's too late. I actually can't do anything about it. The back is lovely. It's not understitched or anything yet, so the lining's still peeking out. It's hard to show because I have holding it shut, but I cut about 5 inches off the side. Much better. It's not been ironed yet, but next I'm going to iron and then understitch as much as I can, and then it's time for the waistband. Just kidding, it's time for horsehair. This is a very helpful shot of me understitching the hem. I add an invisible zipper onto the back. I have found the best way to get a zipper to stay in place is to just hand baste it. I do use an invisible zipper foot, and I have also ironed it open. I pinned the waistband to the front of the skirt, stitched it, and then flipped it over, and I used visible top stitching to stitch it on because it won't show under the bodice. The only thing left to do is now to put some skirt hooks on the waistband. I'm not going to film that because it's not going to be very interesting, so some magic. You'll see the skirt done next. Ta-da! This is fabulous. Can I add trains to all of my outfits? Anyway, the next step is I was going to dip dye it. I still don't have a big enough dyeing pot to do this properly, so I have to do it in my kitchen sink. Also, it's very cold, so I would like to go put my sweatshirt back on. Much better. Sorry, this skirt is gorgeous and very distracting. I have two, I think they're like 15 feet long sheer curtains. I found it at a garage sale, I think. Her cape base is blue with like silver on top. So my plan is to dye this light blue and then paint silver paint on top, maybe? See how that works out? Anyway, that's not what I'm working on right now. Working on is this, and, you know, this. So today I am going to dip dye the skirt and the sleeves. And it's not food. The plan is to make my sink as hot as possible so I have a kettle. These are the sleeves for the mesh undershirt. If this doesn't work out, I do have more of that. I do not have any more of this, so this had better work on the skirt. I'm not sure I would really recommend dyeing in a rented kitchen, but so far I haven't had any issues. I dip dyed the skirt so there's a gradient so it's darker at the bottom and lighter at the top. I'm gonna let this dry. I was reminded today that literally a year ago on this date, I was dip dyeing my Elsa frozen tube coat. So that was kind of a coincidence that I'm doing it again today. What? Ta-da! It's done! Well, the skirt is done. The rest is not. Alright, I need my dress form back. Time to go. I set up my dress form in the hallway because it's the longest space and pinned the curtain to it to measure, well, not measure, eyeball how long I wanted it to be. And also high-five my very helpful assistant. I am currently sitting on the spot of the length where I want it to be, and I marked it with a safety pin. Hi, Emmie. Yeah, hello. Again. I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to cut this on camera, so I think I'm going to just jump to a diagram of how I cut it. I think I neglected her or something. Oh my gosh. I'm being a drama queen. So to show you how I did the cape, this is part of my Pascal pattern. If you want to download that, check out my blog and you can make your very own plush Pascal. Anyway, I'm just going to use this as a sample piece of paper. The way that I cut the capes is I folded it in half, cut diagonally along here, unfolding this one, and rotating these two. This is the shape that I ended up with for the capes. Now I'm going to do some French seams here, and eventually I will be cutting it kind of like this, is sort of her shape. Something like that. That's the plan. Alright, so it's actually about 20 minutes from when I dyed the skirt. When I did a test sample, it didn't really set too well, but that's okay because I just need it to be a light blue, which this is almost a light blue, and I am out of dye now, so it's gonna have to do. I pinned the cape to the dress form. I was messing with it last night, and and I wasn't entirely happy with the shape, but now that it's on there, I kind of love it. Excuse me. That is my cape that you're sitting on. It's still not feeding time yet. It doesn't matter how much you pout. I folded the cape in half, pinned it in the shape of where I wanted to cut it, and I then kissed my assistant, who was being very helpful, sitting on my project. I tried to relocate my assistant, then made a very fancy dog bed, apparently. Plucked up the courage and cut the cape. I like it. So the next step is paint. Just kidding. The next step is a rolled hem with my fancy rolled hem foot. Let's pretend that my rolled hem foot experience went as well as I portrayed it. It didn't, but I fixed it. So we're in my kitchen now because that's the biggest floor space for painting. I have some drop cloths, they're just old curtains. It's the middle of winter and I am drinking cold seltzer from a tiki bottle. Because the cold never bothered me anyway. So I have a bunch of silver fabric paint and glitter fabric paint. The big plan is to do this. So I'm basically gonna do the outline first and then I'm gonna fill it in later and really hope I don't make any mistakes. That's always a great plan for what you're doing, so. I took my disappearing ink pen and freehanded the cape design. Funny story, my original disappearing ink pen disappeared last year and I never found it. And I bought another one which exploded, so that was very handy. So this is my third disappearing ink pen. I did even this out to make it more symmetrical. When this dried, I highlighted parts with glitter paint. It looks fabulous up close, although I'm not sure you can see it on camera. I was never quite freehanding the snowflakes on this. Been very carefully drying out the jumbo snowflake at the bottom, so now I'm gonna paint it in. I have made a bunch of mini Elsa capes for my nieces over the years, so I enlarged the snowflakes that I've used for that. I traced over them with my third disappearing ink pen, and then filled in the spaces with more paint. Since I can't actually make a cape with ice, I had to make do with glitter paint. Ta-da! The cape is done! Hooray! Except for the top part. I was gonna finish that later. I have cut some of the sequins, and obviously I had to pick appropriate bags to hold them. The next step... no. Again? So anyway, the next step is to pry the sequins away from my dog's butt. I'm gonna do this outside, which it's actually like 50 degrees out. All my snow is melting. E6000 is a pretty toxic glue, so I elected to keep my lung tissue and glue this outside. So this is probably the last round of sequins that I'm gonna have to cut. The first layer is actually done. I ordered a whole bunch of crystals. Really a lot. And some blue ones. These are for something else actually. And then I have these. They're supposed to be poinsettias, but they kind of look like snowflakes, so I'm gonna run with that. Put these on the outside of the bodice after I finish putting on the rest of the sequins. Isn't that pretty? I also got these ones. It is Friday, March 5th. It is all of 12 degrees out at the moment, which is just wonderful because basically I have to finish this by Saturday because the lake is pretty much gonna melt. So this is layer 1. Layer 2, making it look a lot less checkerboarded. I'm gonna see if I can do this in my garage because it is maybe 12 degrees out and windy. Unfortunately, I am not yet Elsa, and the cold does bother me, so this is gonna be a rough day. It's time for rhinestones! I put the glue in a syringe, although it didn't help as much as I was expecting. I still used a toothpick to put the glue on most of the rhinestones. In my many years as a figure skater, I never actually bothered with rhinestones, so this is the first for me. For the sleeves rhinestones, I traced and cut the sleeves, and I sketched what I wanted on them, and then I went over that with Sharpie. I then put parchment paper down. E6000 does not stick to that. And then it was back to the garage for more gluing. Hooray. I stitched the top together, but I didn't film it. It wasn't very interesting. Nothing very much happened except that I broke a needle. And the costume is done! Hooray! At this point it was about 11 p.m. the night before the shoot, and I thought I'd do a test fit, and oh, maybe I should do the cape attachments. It's done! Hooray! And the lake is still frozen! Also, I was quite frozen. This is Elsa running across the ice to try and save Anna, I guess. I don't know. I was just having fun. If you notice my shoes, I was not about to go running across the ice in tiny little ice stilettos, so I went with boots. Because dressing like an ice queen doesn't actually mean that you are one, although I do feel a flurry coming on. It's done! I'm very cold! It's like maybe 20 degrees Fahrenheit out today. I'm so happy with this costume. It came out absolutely perfectly. The bodice is a little bit stiffer than I had imagined, and I literally can't move, but that's probably because there's 2 layers of industrial glue and, you know, plastic. I've had so much fun making this costume. It is absolutely gorgeous. I'm debating trying to make it into a transforming costume with her coronation one on top. That's either gonna have to be not in the winter or wait till next winter. Let me know if you think I should do it. Enjoy these clips of me goofing around in my gorgeous Elsa costume. I am so happy right now. Cold never bothered me anyway. I'm never going back. The past is in the past. This is not quite how I had planned on showing this to you, but I did actually make another skirt for skating in. The ice is kind of really bumpy though, so it's throwing me off a little bit. If you like my style of content and fabulous princess outfits, or fabulous queen outfits I guess, subscribe and follow for more videos! The next step is to put all of these on my dog. Okay. Yes. Excuse me. Kind of play around. Oh, Emmie. Emmie. Oh my gosh. Emmie, can you knock it off? You know, sometimes I'm not talking to you. Yes, Emmie? It's a little suspicious that you hear my camera turn on and then you come over and investigate. Cold never bothered me anyway. It was not convincing. Guess how many times I slip on the ice?